baby. Oh, my sweet caress and I hug it, kiss it over and over again. I love my baby. Oh, sweet tenderness, and I've been looking into your eyes, looking inside your heart. She's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of rock and roll. A little bit of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of rhythm and soul. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. She makes me feel so good. Look out! I love my baby. She's got that magic touch. She be touch me here, there, and everywhere. I love my baby. Oh, sweet happiness, and I'm loving you forever, ever and ever. She's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of rock and roll. A little bit of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of rhythm and soul. You must love. Sent from up above. She makes me feel so good. Rock-a-jammer. She's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of rock and roll. A little bit of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of rhythm and soul. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of rock and roll. Rock and roll. Rock and roll. I love my little baby. I love my little baby. I love my little baby. you that there is more than I, 'cause I've got Kauai on my mind. You don't see I go to find my heart. I've been long time. Oh, they tell me I am number stars.
Okay, let me see. We turn that off. And don't need that anymore for now. All right, so welcome back, everybody. We don't have any new folks. Oh, Jeff, there you are. Glad you could join us today. You got any audio there, Jeff? I don't hear anything if you're speaking. Okay, well, anyways, hey, David, I wanted to mention that before. I think your inverted whatchamacallit thing is really cool. Instead of having the background with the with those virtual pictures, like
something different.
Yeah, I wish I knew how you did that because that's really cool. Like this one here, where I put up the Northern Lights behind me. And that's really good. Except one of the things I found is that when I'm holding my instrument up, if I put my ukulele in my hand,
It disappears. Yeah,
it disappears and you don't get to see it. So I have
yeah.
to.
I mean,
during the sessions, I always had to turn that off.
yeah.
Hey, Denise, long time no see.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things I said we would talk about in the oh, that's the primer. Where's the other one? I want the group lessons. Was that hopefully everybody's got access to online to the files that we're going to be sort of using, and one is the blues progression cheat sheet. Let me make sure I got the right ones up. Blues progression cheat sheet. The finger practice exercises, and most of you saw that already today when we were in the primer session. The strum techniques and the diminished chord. So one of the things I want to do is continue on with the diminished chord for the piggybacking off of the primer. For those who just joining us for the lessons, we're going to start there because some of the songs that we play actually have diminished chords in it. And a lot of times people see that, they see a chord name like a G or a C, an F. Then they see these three letters behind it, D-I-M, and they go, wow, that must be a very complicated chord. Or another way of seeing it is a D with a, like the powers, squared, cubed. You have the numbers that are superscript, and then you have the zero or the not. That also represents diminished chords. And what that looks like, and I will tell you, there's nothing to be afraid of. If you open or have opened the diminished cheat sheet, it says blues sheet and diminished chord sheets. Let me see. Diminished chord sheets. Let me see what page it's on. Page one's a C, F7, G7. It's on page 5. On page 5, it's only a shape. It doesn't tell you which fret it's on, but that one, if you use the diagram, it's on the 2nd fret. And it looks like a D7 chord. So if you play the Hawaiian, oops, let me switch cameras. If you play the Hawaiian D7, which is not a full D7, but it looks like this. So you got your index finger on what it looks like an A minor, and then right below it, on the second string, on the same fret, you have your middle finger. This is a Hawaiian D7, or sometimes also called an open D7 because I have two open strings. And then you got two strings here, the third and the first, that are open. In the third fret, I want you to put your ring finger and your pinky. So now you have a finger on all four positions, and it looks like what's on that picture. And if you want to know what that picture looks like, I'm going to share my screen. And I know it gets dorked up when I do this, but that's okay. Show the screen. All right, so now that now you should see on your screen what looks like the diminished chord. Okay, now that diminished chord, like I said, if you see the word DIM, you see that superscript 0, this is the only shape that you need to know. There is no other shape that is useful or that doesn't have you play twister with your fingers on an ukulele fretboard to play this diminished chord. This is the only way. If you learn this shape, to play this shape, then you can play any diminished chord. We'll talk about what notes they are in a little bit, but first I want to make sure you understand that this is the only shape. So now I want you to do is I'm going to stop sharing because that always eats up resources. Now where's my other picture at? There it is. Zoom always loves reorganizing my desktop windows, and I've always got to put them back. I need to make marks on my monitor, the plastic of my monitor, so I know where my screens are based on the boundaries. Okay, so well, that's not good. There we go. All right, so one of the things I want to show is that we're going to take that and put it all the way back to the first fret. Now the way we're going to do this is the same way we already talked about at the primer. We're going to play it one string at a time. And we're going to go from the fourth string. Hey, Joyce, long time no see. Hopefully you're doing well.
Dizzy.
Okay, so anyways, we're going to start one string at a time. You're going to start with the fourth string, which is the G. And then you're going to go to the C string, then the E string, then the A string. Right, so it sounds just like... And you want to play them slow and in time. And you want to make sure you hear all four notes clearly. Now that's the whole thing. Before you get started, you want to make sure you hear them clearly. And then just to kind of to see how it works, I want you to move that whole shape up one fret. So now you're on the second and third fret, and then I want you to repeat that. And David's playing a high G, so you know what it sounds like on a high G. Then I want to take it one more time, move it up to the third fret. So now your finger's on the third and fourth fret. Now if I strum this, have you ever heard that tone before? Some of you may have heard me ask this or talk about this before. How many horns are on a train? You listen to a train as it when it blows, it actually blows the horn. It has this horn. Woo woo. It is that chord sound that they actually have on those three horns. So if you're playing like Johnny Cash's song and you're trying to build a fill, dun, 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 woo, woo, dun, you can play the train sound there. So anyways, then you continue moving this up the fret wire until you actually get all the way up to the 7th fret. That means fingers are in the 7th and 8th fret, same shape. You see how my fingers are in the same shape? Now, if you hadn't noticed on your own instrument, the fret wires are getting closer and closer together, so it becomes a little bit more difficult to keep your fingers together. And my fat sausages of fingers, it's not impossible to do. And if you watch Israel Kamaka Viva Ole playing some of these things at the 7th fret, and you look at his sausage fingers, he had definitely bigger sausage fingers than mine, and he's able to play it on a soprano. So this is where you, and then what you do is you go back, you go from the 7th fret back to 6 and then 5. And if you remember the key to this as we talk about it, then I'm gonna try to walk you through it. I'm gonna go real slow. We'll go all the way up to the 7th fret and back. The key to this is that as you hit the note on the A string and you shift and you play the note on the 4th string, that time difference between that, in this case the B to the A, is the same distance as if you were going, my fingers are back in the 1st fret, going between the strings shift and play, shift and play. So that tempo between the notes is nice and even. You want to make sure that is even as well. And John, and I think, well, everybody who was in a primer class, you're not allowed to answer this because you know the question. If you're hearing buzzing and your tempo's not quite right, or your tempo's not right, buzzing, or you're making mistakes, what do you think you should do? Anybody? I see Nancy's still trying to set her system up. Well, anyways, if you're not answering, I'll go ahead.
I'm here. I just have.
I'm sorry. Who was that?
I'm here. I'm just having.
Okay. Well, no, not Nancy. I didn't mean Nancy. I meant Joyce. Joyce was still setting up. Sorry, wrong name. I'm looking at Joyce's picture and it says Joyce on it. And then I said Nancy. Okay. So you want to slow down. You want to slow it down. You want to keep the two things that I always teach is tempo and tone. You want to make sure those are consistent. So when you play this, you want to be able to go shift. Now, here's one of the biggest mistakes, rushing that 4th note. So when you're playing that note here, that pinky, and you're playing that B, and it's time to shift, you don't want to cheat the B note or any of the other subsequent notes that follow of their beat. You want to make sure that note's heard all the way through the beat and then the next note is played. That means your shifting has to get faster, relatively. So if you can't play that transition in time, again, slow the tempo down and then do it again. So now we're going to play this together, or try to play it together. And I'm going to play it at as slow a tempo as I can, but without speeding up. And so here's the beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Shift. 1, 2, 3, 4. Shift. 1, 2, 3, 4. Shift. Now we're going backwards. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 should be on the 4th fret. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're back to the 1st fret. 2, 3, 4. Okay, good. I saw a lot of people keeping up. That's great. Now, this is one that you, as I talked about in the primer, you want, eventually you'll speed up. Eventually you'll play it quicker. But again, the key is when you do this, you want to make sure you can hear all the notes, the tempo is even, and as you get all the way up to the top, and then you move it back down again. The more you can play that consistently, because you play it slow is smooth, smooth is fast, and then fast you'll be able to play, and that means you can play chords. You can play them much cleaner every time, because I always say this, and so I don't know how many people have heard it, but I'll say it again anyways. I don't care if you're a Jake, you can only strum one string at a time. No musician can strum all the strings at once. Strum. I didn't say pick, strum. Because I can certainly do this. But I'm picking the strings, not strumming. When you strum, you literally can only hit one string at a time. You may go very, very fast, but you only hit one string at a time. So if you're clean, slow, then you're going to be clean when you strum all the time. And this is how you improve your quality of playing, by doing these kinds of finger exercises. I wanted to point out the diminished chord because everybody freaks out about that. Now, how do you practice that other than what I just showed you? One way is an easy way is to how to get started is that you hold your C chord with your pinky. Okay, everybody hold your C chord and you just strum it. Now, what I want you to do is strum that 4 times, and it doesn't need to be an even time. Then now I want you to put the diminished chord down without moving the pinky. And if you think about it, it's the diminished chord that goes with that where your pinky is at. Then I want you to strum 4 times there. Okay? And then I want you to pick play the C chord again, which means you take off those 3 fingers you just put on and strum it 4 times. And then the diminished chord. Now here's the thing, when you're strumming, the intent is still the same, tone and tempo. So you want to strum in an even pace that gives you an opportunity, so when you're going from the C chord to the diminished chord, is that you can put that diminished chord down in time. Okay, that's an exercise that I want you to try, because that gets you 2 things. The hurdle of saying, I don't know how to play a diminished chord. You get over that hurdle because you'll get to do it lots of times. And what a diminished chord looks like and how to get to it. What we did right now is going from the C chord to a diminished. So it means you already have a finger down on your instrument to play the diminished chord. Now here's a neat trick. If I take my, primer guys know about it because I talked about it for the first time today. If I take that index finger off from the diminished where my pinky's on a C, what chord does that look like to you? I see a lot of mouths moving, but no sound.
G7.
Yes, that's right. It's a G7 chord. So but it's not in the G7 position. So that means you have to, don't take those other 3 fingers off. You slide your whole hand to the left 1 fret, and now you're in the G7 chord. So now what I want you to do is you're going to go from this position, and you're going to put the pinky back down, the index finger back down to change the G7 back into a diminished chord. Okay? So now you're going to have 4 chords in this exercise. You're going to go from the C chord to the C diminished, to the G7 chord, to a, so the good one would be named, be a D, B, would be a B diminished with the G7 chord. And I'll explain that here in a minute. So this will be the B diminished. And then from here, I want you to go back to the C chord. So if you notice, one of the things I did in these 4 chords is that my pinky never left the string. Okay, so I played the C chord to the C diminished, to the G7, to the B diminished, to the C chord, and then to the C diminished, to the G7 chord, to the B diminished, and then to the C. Now, if you practice the chords in that order, it starts to give you the feel of how do you go to a diminished chord from a chord that you're already playing. Now, it turns out the C chord and the G7 chord already are partial in the shape of the diminished. What happens if you have an F chord? That's not in the right shape position to play the diminished chord, but there is one that I want you to practice. And this is just going to be 3 chords. You go for the F chord, to the C diminished, which you already practiced, to the C chord, using the pinky only. Now, from here, I want you to play, just put the F chord, leaving the pinky down, but you're going to only strum that twice. And then you're going to pick the pinky up, strum that twice. And then you're going to play the C diminished 4 times. C chord 4 times. Then F with the C on top, 2, F2, to the C diminished 4 times, and the C chord 4 times. Okay, we're going to do that real slow, and I'll try to remember to count that off. This is an exercise, so this is like exercise number 3 that I'm showing you. And then I'll explain, go a short explanation on what I mentioned before about the B diminished, why it's called the B diminished, and how these apply to songs that we're already doing. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, C, 2, 3, 4, C diminished, 2, 3, 4, G7, 2, 3, 4, B diminished, 2, 3, 4, back to the C. Now we're going to go to the F shape, 2, 3, 4, F's with C on top, 2, F, 2 to the C diminished, 2, 3, 4 to the C diminished, 1, 2, 3, 4 to the F with the C on top, 2, F, and then C diminished, 2, 3, 4 to the C chord. Now we're going to do the first progression, and then the C diminished, 2, 3, 4, G7, 2, 3, 4, and then B diminished, 2, 3, 4, and then back to the C chord, 2, 3, and then stop. Okay, so I just walked you through a bunch of different chords. Now here's your real exercise when you're practicing on your own. Pick any 2 of the chords that I talked about. Pick one of them, like the major chords, a C, F, or the G7, and pick any of those diminished chords. It could be a C diminished, even if you're on a G7, and you could even play the G7 the regular way, and then switch it to a C diminished. Play the finger gymnastics and play the C diminished and go back to the regular G7. The whole idea is not so much that it belongs to a song, but it gets your fingers used to moving around on the instrument. That's the main part of the exercise. So when you practice, that's kind of how you want to try to exercise your fingers, by changing the different ways from a different chord to that one. And if you're comfortable with 2 chords, picking a major chord and a diminished chord, then try to pick 2 major chords. So you're going from a major chord to a diminished chord, back to a major chord, a different one. Because you want to be able to practice going to the diminished chord and coming off the diminished chord. Okay? Those are some practice techniques that I suggest that you try to do to get you more familiar, again, with the diminished chord. Now, what song does anybody remember? What song? There's 2 of them that we played within the last, while we've been in this COVID situation, or practicing social safe distancing as part of our jams and our meetings and our open mics. Does anybody know which songs, 2 songs that we've played that have a diminished chord in it? Everybody remember Beautiful Kauai? Remember Beautiful Kauai? And it's in the bridge or the chorus is where we have a diminished chord. It goes from the F to the C diminished to the C. right? That's where we have one of them. How many of you remember playing My Sweet Gardenia Lay? There's another place in Sweet Gardenia Lay that has a diminished chord. So if you're comfortable playing the diminished, it sounds great when you add these diminished chords, because this is a very jazzy chord. It creates a tension. The official name of this chord is a dominant seventh chord, and there or whatever the letters are too. But it's because it has that name. I mean, any chord that's a seventh means it creates a tension. It's got to go somewhere, so this C diminished resolves at the C. So that's a word that you'll hear often, is that resolving. So when you play that diminished, it's got to go somewhere else. You can't leave it there. Now you can go from a diminished to a 6, and then to a major. So I mean, there's all kinds of different ways in which you end, and that's getting jazzy. So you don't need to know the theory why it's so. So a lot of times you just what a buddy of mine who passed away some years ago that I used to play gigs all over the DC area with, Gordon Valesco. He said, "Moses, you know a lot about music theory, but you don't know how to play." Which early on it was lost on me. It was because I let this get out of the way of this when I played. And when I just played, don't worry about what chords it came next in the progression, but really just played the music. It sounded better. And because that's what you express. If I played with this all the time, the music sounds mechanical. If I played with this, it sounds like music. Anyways, that's one of the thoughts. So now those are the two songs. So, and we're, at the jams, we do play those. And one of the songs I'll actually play both of those songs today as part of the this group lesson, is My Sweet Gardenia Lay. And of course, I always like to play the 3 signature songs. So we'll play Beautiful Kauai, so that we use what we just learned. Matter of fact, why don't we do that? I'm going to put on my screen, let me get to it. I thought I already had that up. Beautiful Kauai. Okay. So I'm going to have Beautiful Kauai up on the screen here shortly, as soon as I get my screen. Let's share the screen. There we go. Okay, so you should see Beautiful Kauai on the screen. And we're going to play through that. Let me see. Yeah. Can everybody see that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, can you see my mouse moving around on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. One of the chords we originally sung, there was a reason why these chords were in square brackets, is because they were optional chords. It means you did not need to play them. This music still sounds good without diminished chords. If you could play them, then it is recommended that you play them. If you couldn't play them, you stayed on the F chord, or you automatically went to the C chord. It didn't matter. So we're going to play this song with those. So we're going to play, let me see. Okay, so I'm going to play it real slow. We're going to play the chorus part only, then we'll play the whole song. So I'm going to play the walk down from the C major 7, and then the C7, and then we're going to start right in the song. Okay, and then we're going to try to play. I'm going to try to play it slow enough so you can switch to the C diminished, and when we get down there, we're and then a G diminished. Now a G diminished is that this is a weird one, because you need to have, I forgot, before I do that, I forgot one step that I wanted to do. Why the diminished chords are called what they are. And does anybody know why the diminished chords are called what they are? There's 2 reasons that go together. But the first reason is what I'm really looking for.
I think the fifth is
Anybody?
dropped a fret.
What's that?
Isn't the fifth dropped a fret?
No, that's not it. It's far simpler than that. Denise, I saw you reaching for your keyboard. You were going to answer. I didn't hear anything.
Well, I was going to add to David's, but since you steered him away, my answer's probably wrong too. Because it was my understanding that the third and the fifth are both dropped.
Well, that's technically from a music theory correct, but it's far simpler on that.
Okay.
A diminished chord is if you hold your diminished chord on the second and third frets. Anybody, let me switch cameras so that you can actually see my fingers. And this is kind of an important, that means I got to stop sharing and then go to the other camera. So one of the things is that I got 4 fingers on the string. What note, if anybody knows your notes on the fretboard, is my index finger on?
A.
The A note, that's correct. So guess what this diminished chord is called? A diminished.
A diminished.
Where's my ring finger sitting?
On the E.
On the E.
E flat.
E flat. It's on the E flat or a D sharp. So this diminished chord, without me moving my fingers, is also called an E flat diminished or a D sharp diminished. Where is my middle finger sitting on? What note is that sitting on?
G flat.
G flat or
F sharp.
Or F sharp.
F sharp. This
Yeah.
diminished chord is also called the F sharp or the G flat diminished chord. Where's my pinky sitting?
C.
It's on a C. So this chord is also called the C diminished. That's what's on our lead sheet there for Beautiful Kauai. It turns out, and this is why I really love teaching the ukulele, because the diminished chord takes on the name, or on the ukulele, the diminished chord has the name of any one of those notes that your finger happens to be sitting on. So this has A diminished, E flat D sharp diminished, F sharp G flat diminished, and C diminished. So that means this chord, the shape, has 6 names to it. Now in another position, depending, and as you move the chord, that finger shape around, has fewer names, and I think 6 is the most names it will have in any one position. 4 is the smallest number of names it has in any one position. Does anybody know what instrument drives what that chord is really called?
The bass.
The bass. That is correct. Whatever the bass is playing, that's what this chord is. So when we're playing in the mist, it goes in the mist of Fern Grotto. The bass is playing this note. Grotto, grotto. The bass is actually playing that note in its run. So that drives this chord, the diminished chord, to be a C diminished. Thanks, Denise. So let me go back to sharing that sheet. So let's play just the chorus part first. I'm going to play the first 3 chords. That's the walk down. If you want to play that, that's fine. I'm going to play it really slow. If you want to sing it, that's fine. I'm going to suggest everybody put themselves on mute, so that we don't have the reverb or the feedback going on. So here we go. I'm going to go. In the midst of Fern Grotto, and then Mother Nature made her home, and the falls of Wailupa, where lovers often roam. Okay, we're going to stop there because then this is where I did forget one part. When I play the G diminished, the one for this song is that you're playing the diminished chord that has the G note. So you can play it with that one, which is this shape here. And you have to think about it as the fingers, the two index fingers are actually on the nut, and you're having your ring and pinky on the first fret of the first and third string. Or you could play where the middle finger is on the G note on the second string, and you play your G diminished here. Either one works, but if you play this one, there's a different G7 shape that most of you might not know, which you should play this G7. This is the G7 you should play. So if you walk that D minor up, you go. You kind of hear that jazzy walk up to that on that chord. You could play that, but if you're going to play this regular G7 down here, which is in the first and second frets, then you should play the G7. So the way to really think about it, take your G7 shape, your regular one, lift up your index finger and push it back to the first fret. If you play this, this is the G diminished, and it would be the proper G diminished to learn how to play for this song if you're going to play down in the first three frets. So you're going to play that D minor, go to the D diminished with that's the G7, and then slide that up and put your index finger down, and that's the G7 there. This would include the two jazz chords that we have. There's other jazz sounding chords that are in there that are in the square brackets, but for today, since I was talking about diminished chords, this is one of the ones where you'll get to practice that. So let's walk through the chorus again, then we're going to play it all the way up to the top. So just and we'll get into the blues part in the second half of today's lesson. But if you're playing a C chord, it's also hard to get to the B chord, which is looks like the B flat chord on the first fret. So one of the things that you want to do for this song is that in that line, Mother Nature made her home, you want to learn how to play this C chord, which is a fully closed C chord on the third fret. And that's basically a B flat shape. So it looks like the B flat that you would play back here. And you just move it up to the third fret. That's a C chord. And the reason for that is when I move to the B chord, it's nothing more than sliding it down one fret to the second fret and then sliding it back up to the third fret. So when I'm, just to kind of illustrate that, so in the mist of Fern Grotto, Mother Nature made her home. And if you think about it, the notes that you're singing or I'm singing are in that chord. So I'm going, in the mist of Fern Grotto, Mother Nature made her home. It's these two notes that G made her home. Oh, nature made her home. It's these two notes, and that's that C chord. That's the fully closed C chord, and it moves down to a B and then back up to the C. Any questions on those chord shapes? They're not really new chords, but it gives you a way to play the chords that I hope everybody in the club will eventually know how to play it, and it kind of gives it a better flavor. The other more advanced players like David may be playing something that goes like this. Or even a jazz chord that would go with something like that. It really depends on where we are and how we're playing this music. There's a lot of different ways to stack a bunch of valid chords to fill out the sound. Okay, so let's do that one more time. Just the, let me flip my camera around again. Where's my thingy? Oh, by the way, I wanted to ask, how's my volume on my microphone? Is it not too loud? Because I know it was loud. Someone, if you didn't notice, my wife down there in the Tai Chi uniform with that permanent smile. That's just her picture. But anyways, because she's my best critic, because she's on a different floor, but when she told me when I went to go get ices that my volume was a little loud, and it really depends. Sometimes I do different events, and I have to have these different settings for my hardware. So I just want to be sure. So here we go. Beautiful Kauai, just the chorus part. Here's the walk down. In the mist of Fern Grotto, Mother Nature made her home, and the falls of Wailua, where lovers often roam. And that's just two strums on that G7 chord. And then it's a cappella and says, I'll return. And that down strum on the turn of return goes where we go. So any questions on adding those diminished chords in? No questions? Everybody ready to play that up to speed? Not ensemble speed. We're going to play this at society speed. Okay, so the lead in for the intro is that we played the vamp twice. It's D minor, G7, C. We play that combination twice. Usually whoever's leading the song will play it solo first to set the tempo, and then everybody jumps in the second time around. And the way it sounds like this. And those first two chords, and I'm just going to play the vamp over and over. So that's the D minus 2, G7 2, and then C 2, 3, 4, and then D minor, and then G7, and then C. So here we go. 3, 4. One more time. This is where you join in to the G7. There's an island across the sea, a beautiful Kauai, a beautiful Kauai, and it's calling, yes, calling to me. A beautiful Kauai, beautiful Kauai. In the midst of Fern Grotto, Mother Nature made her home, and the falls of Wailua, where lovers often roam. Strong. I'll return to my island across the sea, a beautiful Kauai, a beautiful Kauai, where my true love is waiting for me, a beautiful Kauai, a beautiful Kauai. And this is where I do the walk down back to the bridge, or chorus. In the midst of Fern Grotto, Mother Nature made and the falls of Wailua, where lovers often roam. I'll return to my island across the sea, a beautiful Kauai, a beautiful Kauai, where my true love is waiting for me, a beautiful Kauai, a beautiful Kauai. Okay, now we're going to tag that last line, which means you play it again. Beautiful Kauai. Slow it down. A beautiful Kauai. Now on this one, we are going to do that C major 7. So now we're going to hear. Now that C major 7 is nothing more than putting your finger on the 2nd fret 1st string. That's the easiest one for you to play, and that's the C major 7. So you have to kind of watch me on that last one. When you're tremoloing on the C chord, you watch me, and then I'm going to go, and everybody strums that C major 7 all at once. So any questions? Feel free to ask questions now or forever hold your peace. I know there's got to be questions. No questions? I'm surprised nobody asking me about the D7 superscript 2, D7 superscript 1. For the more immediate players, that's your alternative D7 positions. And if you, this is a plug that I always put in for the Roy Sakuma chord, Treasury of Chords, and I don't have mine here. But it's one of the best chord books that's laid out because it shows if you go to a chord like this is a dominant 7th chord, you go and on that, it always opens on 2 pages and it goes from A to G sharp. On the top row is the 1st position, so you would see this chord in the 1st position. You also may see, I don't think in that book it shows the open D7, but it shows this D7. The next D7 it shows is a bar on the 5th fret with it looks like an A7 chord. Then the next D7 that it shows that you can actually play on this instrument is, let's see, that's A, C, D, is the one that looks like an F7 chord played up here. That's the next D7. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's not. This is the next D7 chord. And then the one after that is this one. So all that means is a different position. So D7-2 means the 2nd inversion, which would be this position. D7-1 superscript means the 1st technically inversion, because I call D the D7 with no name there. Either one works, open or the fully closed on the 1st position. And sometimes I will tell you to play the open intentionally because the melody may be singing an A note, so I want you to play that open. If the melody note goes to the C note, then I may have you play it closed. So a lot of times it depends on which melody note that you're singing. Any questions on the C diminished or the G diminished that I introduced to you here? So you got your, as far as the lesson goes, you got some practice chords, and you got at least 3 diminished chords to practice. You got the G diminished, you got the B diminished, and then you got the C diminished, which are basically the first 3 frets. Because to get the B diminished, you got because you got that B flat that's in the G diminished. Then you got the B diminished, which is the 2nd fret over, and then you got the C diminished. So it's the diminished chords in the first 3 frets. And that was absolutely planned. I actually just realized that I just gave the exercise that I sort of gave you to practice are actually the diminished chord in the first 3 frets. That was totally unplanned, but it worked out. Okay, so the next thing, so no, I wanted to do one more song, and that was the, and we're just going to play through it. I just got to find it, and that's the Sweet Gardenia Lay. Let me see, is that in there? Yeah, okay. So I just got to rotate through that. There we go. Oh, I lied. There is no diminished chord in this one. So which one was I thinking that had, oh, I know which one has it. This has 2 diminished chords in it as well. Kaulana Kawaihae, which is the other signature song. But we're going to play this one instead. Can you see this on your screen? Oop.
Yes.
Okay. So this one, of course, I start on the C chord. And we got a C diminished on there, which is what's one of the chords we talked about. And we have the G diminished on there, which is also the chord we talked about in Beautiful Kauai. So here we go with Kaulana Kawaihae. Does anybody not know this song? Except for me, I think maybe Nancy, you're not familiar with this song, right? Jeff, do you know this song? Okay. So I'll play through it the first time. And you see where the C diminished is in the Kahiko. So again, this is for, I know this is for everybody's benefit. Some of you have heard it before. This is one of the signature songs. So ideally, the society would like everybody in the society to learn the 2 songs, Beautiful Kauai and Kaulana Kawaihae, without any lead sheets, to be able to play this right off the, from memory. And it has to do with some of the things that we sort of set as the norm when we're out playing as a group, as a society. One of the places is at Jake Shimabukuro's concert at the Birchmere. We have, for the last 7 years now, have played at the Birchmere as we've hosted the pre-show jams in their main drinking hall, I guess you want to call it that, in their main hall. And then afterwards, we get to take group pictures with Jake. So the society, so we said, if you want to go take individual pictures and ask quite individual questions and get an ukulele sign or anything, you would stand in line like you normally would. But when you get done, you would come over where the group's at, over by the bar. And we're usually playing music while he's signing. And when we're playing the music, we're playing things like Kaulana Kawaihae and Beautiful Kauai. We don't have any sheet music, no music stands. We don't. It's not formal. It's very informal. And when we play a song like that, a Hawaiian song, with no sheet music, and you know all the words, that's fantastic. Now, real quick, as a sort of a lesson, if you look at the second line of every verse, is exactly the same. That means if you learn that verse first, or that part of the verse first, you've learned half of the song. If you look at the last half of the second verse and the last half of the third verse, that's the same words there as well. And so if you start to learn these songs like that, you'll actually get a good chunk of it. So it's okay if all you learn is the second line of the verse and everybody else who's there sings the whole thing. It sounds really cool when there's a smaller group singing the first part and then the whole group of you jump in on the second line. It looks like it was arranged that way. And it sort of is. There was an intention behind the reason picking this one when now 11 years ago, the club then wanted to have signature songs and they wanted one that was in the Hawaiian language. So this has been around doing this for 11 years with this particular song. So you ask, and this is not for today, there is a tutorial out on our website that actually walks you through what's called the Hawaiian olelo. It tells you how to pronounce all these words. And if you go to the forum, you go to the forum topic songs, the one that's at the top, which is pinned to the top, has a list of all the songs. One of the songs it's a YouTube video. If you click on that, it will take you to the instructions on how to pronounce these words. And it's a tutorial that actually literally walks you through. This is how you say that second line. E olelo mai, kahiko mai, o pua ka ilima. And if you work, and it walks you through that as a tutorial. All right, so let's go through and just play the song. You can follow along with the chords if you don't know the words. I'm gonna trust that if you're singing it, you're singing it correctly, because I won't be able to hear you. But it sort of goes like this. Kaulana, o Kawaihae, ike kai, havana vana, eolelo mai. We're going to C diminished. Akahiko mai. And I'll show you that trick there too. You want to go right to the second verse. Ekilohi Yamaunakea. As we normally sing this twice each verse. Uahili, but we're not going to do that today. Kukila kila. Eolelomai. Here it comes. C diminished. Kahiko to the C. G diminished. Then we're going to go to the third verse. Aina, mai kapuana, mikuahiri, kupila kila, eolelomai. C diminished. Kahiko to C mai. G diminished. We'll go back to the G diminished. And what's not in there on this sheet is there is a G7 turnaround on the end back to the C. Now, one of the things that I didn't show you in this one, but it's probably a good thing to bring up, is that the F minor, C run on the end. There are two different ways to do that. One is to play. Let me see, get out of the stop share for now and switch cameras. Hopefully I'm not making people dizzy, but I have these cameras set up this way because this is how I teach my private lessons. So I'm going from the F. Now an F minor is typically played with the index on the first fret of the G string or the fourth string, middle finger on the F note, which is on the first fret of the second string, and then the pinky on the C. But this means when you're going from the F chord, going to this F minor, you're having to move 3 fingers to get into position. Now, if you're playing, in this case, the F chord, and the way I play it, I am not saying this is the recommended way, because you'll probably catch a lot of flack for playing the way I play it, but I play it this way because it's easy. Is that, you see where my thumb is? I actually reach over the top, and then I play that F sharp note or the G sharp note with my thumb. My index finger never moves off of the F, and then I drop my pinky. This is how I play my F minor with the F over the top on the G sharp. My index finger never moves, and then my pinky on the. Hey, Catherine, haven't seen you in a while. And then the pinky on the C. This is an easier way, especially the one we're playing this song. You're going from a G diminished to a G7 to an F to an F diminished to the C. This song, out of all the songs we play for the signature songs, has the most chords in it and the most churn in terms of chord changes. And I do try to teach you the shortcuts, how to get from chord to chord. If you come up with a different way, it's fine as long as you're landing on the chord in time. Because not everybody has the same, I would call it, finger dexterity. And how you move from chord to chord is it's unimportant. I will show you an easier way for me. If you adopt that same way, great. If you find a different way is easier for you, that's great too. I mean, there's no wrong way to play this instrument. You play wrong notes, but there's no wrong way. As long as you play the chord with all the right notes, then you did the right way for you. Okay, so you got the F chord to the C diminished. And one of the things you'll notice is that going to the C, I only lift up, my pinky stays there. Because then it's easier for me to take my ring finger and my index finger to jump to the first and third strings for the G diminished on the first fret, and then sliding it over and putting my index finger down for the G7 chord. My index finger is now in position for the F chord to pivot and just raise my middle finger up to the A note on the G string for the F chord, leaving my finger down. This is how I learned, my index finger down and putting those other two down. So now I'm only moving two instead of three fingers, going to the F minor, and then playing that C chord just by lifting up my other two fingers because my pinky is already on the C chord note. And that's kind of how I played this signature song. Any questions on this song before I move off of this and go to the blues? Because I love playing the blues on the ukulele. Any questions? I see Al moving up to the screen. No questions there? Alan, you got any questions? No? Okay. Well, thanks for joining, Catherine. Sorry you joined us late. This video I will make available on, I don't hear you, you're still muted. But like I said, these videos are going to be available on our website. And I'm hoping GoDaddy doesn't blow us away for storing too many large files up there. If they do, it means the video won't stay up long on our website. But I will post it up there in our video folder, and I will put the link to the file in the event page. It'll be in there as in a discussion. How long it stays there depends on how many files because the video files are big. Okay. So we don't have any more questions on that. We're at pretty much the top of the hour. We need to take a quick 5-minute break. I'll leave the Zoom up, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about the blues. So no questions on these 3 songs. Well, actually 2. We got Beautiful Kauai and we got Kaulana Kawaihae that introduce and use what you learned about diminished chords. So quick review: diminished chords, one shape. You got an exercise method all the way up to the 7th fret, all the way back to the 1st fret, and just go back and forth. You should add one of those techniques for the primer folks because now you have the bar and you have the diminished. I will add by the end of the day another one, which is the B flat. You only need to do one in this 15-minute session, and you'd use that as a warm-up. Okay, you don't need to do all 3 unless you're sadistic. But you just need to you could do just one of them in a 15-minute or even a 5-minute sit down first minute, you do a finger exercise like that, and then you go practice something like maybe practice a song. Since most songs do not, I generally try not to make songs last longer than 5 minutes. So any arrangement, if you play only one verse to get used to the chord changes and singing that verse or practicing the lyrics, you could do everything in a 5-minute package. And as adult learners, that's the way I recommend it, is that you practice in short chunks and don't try to do what we told our kids to go over there and play your piano for an hour. We don't learn that way anymore. And so it's, a good 5-minute to a 15-minute chunk throughout the day. And you could if you do 4 of them, you've done an hour. And you do that, and you squeeze that into your schedule. Just take the 5 minutes. How many of you have been around when the Burks were here? That's Larry and Linda Burke. So I'm going to tell a little story of how they went from knowing nothing about the ukulele to be able to perform on a stage in about 2 years. They took what I said about small chunks, small events, lesson events, many times throughout the day. They took that to heart. They took the instruments that they had, placed them throughout the house with 3x5 cards. Then 3x5 cards had little lesson pieces on them, and what they did was, as they were doing it, I got 5 minutes. They would sit there, look at the card, change it for the next person, or the next time either they went or the other partner came there, and then in that 5-minute chunk, they would practice what was on that card. Put the instrument down and then go about their business. They did that throughout the day. They found they were getting anywhere between 2 to 3 hours of practice in a day, which is phenomenal. And then it shows when you consider where they started from, and then 2 years later they're playing on a stage singing in harmony. So it shows what just short intensive spurts of practice can do for you. And I just share that because they are my Jerry's kids example of how that works in adult learning, and it's proof that I believe in that. I got taught that in the Army when I was a young captain, almost 30 years ago. Small group instruction, short spurts of intense knowledge, gets retained as an adult much longer than intensive training over a longer period of time. You tend to lose in the classroom, 50% of what you learn. Short spurts and repetition is a way we learn and we retain stuff a lot longer. And that's Larry and Linda. Now, unfortunately, they left the area, went to California to be with their grandkids and their son. And that's their gain, our loss. Okay, so we're going to take a quick 5-minute break. That'll take us to the the 3:15. And we'll come back then, and we're going to do some blues. And hopefully we'll have enough time at the end, close to 4 o'clock. We're going to just jam. And I'm going to see how chaotic that might be. If this works, and hey, Terry. Long time no see.
Finally.
Yeah, we're going to have to get everybody to hold up their instrument and take a picture. Does anybody have any heartburns with me taking your picture off of the Zoom? Well, not right now. We're going to do that when we come back. Is everybody going to come back first? Otherwise, I'll take the picture now. And well, you know what? Let me just take one now, anyways. Joyce, you want to flip your video on so we can see you? Unless you don't want to be in the picture, that's fine. What I'm going to do is this will be shared on our Facebook page, our group Facebook page. There we go, Joyce. And let me see, let me make sure good. There we go. Because I got Jeff in there twice. I'm assuming one is for your audio. And what I'm going to do is I got to flip my camera. I don't want to see my, there we go. Want that. And you're going to hold your instrument up because everybody's proud of the instruments that they have. So I want to make, and then you move close to the camera so it gets seen in there. I got to take these vanity glasses off. And then what we're going to do is that we're going to take a picture, and I'm going to share this on Facebook so that way you could also, it's always posted to our club's Facebook page. Let me make sure I saved that one. Yeah, that one's saved. Okay. So everybody ready? Smiling? Okay. Let me take this picture. All right, I got everybody's picture. I'm going to post that on our page. And I will see you at the quarter hour. So I'm going to put some music on for you, and then we're going to take a quick 5-minute break and be back at 3:15.
Okay, on my mind.
Oh, I love that song. I learned that song about 12 years ago now from a guy named Elmer Lim, aka Sonny Lim, a famous musician in Hawaii. And he actually, the first time I heard it was on a CD called Kauai, and it's called O'Oe'io. It's about a higher being looking out for everybody below. And it has all kinds of different connotations, but and you could take out of it what you wish. But it's a church song sung in Hawaii, a hymn. But the first time I actually learned it as a lesson was from Sonny Lim. And after he showed it to me on a slack key guitar, I learned it from him on an ukulele. And then I taught myself how to play it on a steel guitar because he was my first steel guitar teacher. So I got a lot of practice on that particular song. So I didn't choose that one. That was randomly picked up by Spotify. I have my own I guess you call it a playlist. And I think if anybody's interested, I could actually, you know what? If you're interested in the Hawaiian songs I'm listening to, I just put, and the player is free. I don't pay anything for Spotify. I just dropped it into the chat room, group chat. If you want to copy that, I have some other ones that are, pop rock artists, and I got one I'm going through some of Johnny Cash's songs and things like that. So I got different playlists that I'm working on, more for my own benefit of keeping my own skills up. Okay, so does anybody have any questions what we started with? Because we went over diminished chords diminished chords playing, and so I'm not sharing yet right now. Okay, and then we covered two songs that have diminished chords in it. But it turns out both of them are signature songs, Kaulana, Kawaihae, and Beautiful Kauai. Any questions? And of course, you have to unmute yourself because the new Zoom says I can't unmute somebody. I can request they unmute themselves, but you have to unmute yourself. No questions? Okay, good. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to talk about how to play the blues. I am going, the same page we were on before, it's the blues cheat sheet. This is blues and diminished chord cheat sheet. If you got it up on your own screen, we're on page 4 of that sheet, and I'm going to share my screen for the moment. And you should see that on the screen now. I love how Zoom reorganizes my windows. Okay. Now what you see on the screen is basically 2 chord shapes. Okay. And the 2 chord shapes that you see is this C chord shape, or it's actually a B flat chord shape on the 3rd fret. The other chord shape that you see is this F7 chord shape. And it's in some of the books, they show it with the F note, the A note is the F, and then you're adding this E flat, which is the C string 3rd fret with your ring finger, and then the A string is open. That is an open F7 chord. That is still a correct F7 chord. But the one we need to play is the closed F7. I got to add this C note with your pinky. Okay? We've done this before by leaving the C string open where we played the what we always call, or what I always say is playing the F chord with the C on top. And that means you put your pinky down on the C note. That's the F chord with the C on top. This is the F7 chord with the C on top. It's a fully closed. Now, if you look at the G7 chord, it's the same shape, but you're moving that up to the 3rd fret. And if you have questions later, or if you have more questions about the with closed chords, these are called movable chords. Anytime you have fingers on all the strings, these chords are movable. You can move them up and down the neck to be different chords. In this case, we're only going to use these 2 chord shapes to play the 12-bar blues. Now, the other characteristic of the 12-bar blues is you see these 12 boxes. Those are 4 beats each, or they could be 3 beats each, or 2 beats each, or they could be played in 3/8, or they could play in any number of key signatures, not key signatures, time signatures, but each of those boxes represent a moment in time from musically, which means we're talking about a bar. So it means across the top, so think of this as three different layers. You got 4 bars across the top. We're playing the root chord, in this case the C chord, playing that 1 2 3 4, then 1 2 3 4, then 1 2 3 4, then 1 2 3 4 is the 4 C's on the top. The second row plays the second chord, or the 4 chord, twice, which is the F7. You play the F7 4 beats, and then F7 for the next 4 beats, which is a total of 8 beats. Then you return to the root chord, which is the C chord. You play that for 8 beats, or 2 bars. The third layer is that you add the 5th chord in, literally so you got the 1, 4, and a 5. And I'll explain that here in a little bit more detail. So when I shift out of the share into my picture again, you start with the 5 chord, which is the G7. Play that for 4 bars. Play the F7 for 4 bars. Then you play the C bar. You go back to the root. So you get the 5, the 4, and then the 1. The root is the C chord. You play that for 8 bars. If all you were playing were these 12 bars, now if you look at 4 bars across the top, 4 bars in the middle, with the 4 chord playing the first 2 bars and the root chord playing the next 2 bars, and the third row of 4 bars where you have the 5 chord in the first 4, 4 chord in the second 4, and the root in the last 2, that's a total of 12 bars. This is when you hear the 12-bar blues, this is what they're talking about. This is the basic structure. Now, since we normally play this in a round, this bar, this last one, the bar 12, is sometimes broken up so that allows you to return to the top. Which chord do we usually use as a turnaround? Anybody? You can hold up your hands, or you could take yourself off of mute.
G7.
Which one did you say, Terry?
G7.
G7, that's correct. It's the 5 chord. We take the 5 chord and we loop back around to the top. So we play 2 beats in the last bar of the C chord, play 2 beats of the G7, and then we return to the top. Okay? So I'm going to switch out of sharing mode and back to my main mode, and I'm going to play one whole round, well actually a whole round plus 1 bar for you so you can see what it looks like. If you want to follow along, that's great, but I'm going to be playing that at regular tempo. So here we go. It's 4 2 2 3 4 3 2 3 4 4 2 3 4. The F7 2 3 4 2 2 3. Back to the C 2 3 4 1 2 3. To the G7, F7, to the C 2 3 4. Then you're back to the E chord again at the beginning. So that's a quick and dirty on the. This works in any key. If I were to switch out, let me show the share again, because I think it's on the prior page. And this file is actually on, no, there's actually just bigger pictures. I have a different picture of the 12 bar blues where I don't have the chords in it. What I actually have are Roman numerals in there. So I have a Roman numeral 1 in the first row. I have a Roman numeral 4 in the first 2 bars of the second row, and a Roman numeral 1 in the last 2 bars. And in the third row, I have a Roman numeral 5 in the first box, a Roman numeral 4 in the second box, and then a Roman numeral 1 in the third box. And this last box is actually split with a diagonal where the 1 is in the top left-hand corner and the 5 is in the bottom right-hand corner. The 5 chord in the bottom is a optional chord. If you're going to turn around to go play the song again, you go from, you play the 5 chord to return to the top. You play the 1 again at the top, and then if you're going to end, you want to end on the 1, not on the 5. If you do want to end on the 5, you want to play what's called the major 7. You play the G major 7 as an ending chord, or this actually. That would leave people hanging, but it would actually work, but you would leave them hanging. Okay, so let's try this. Now I said I would show you a thing. This is because this is a lesson. So the lesson part here. Let me unshare. Put my screen back up. I got to reorganize everything after Zoom moved everything around my screen. Okay, so we're going to start with the B flat chord. I want everybody to hold the B flat, which is the B flat shape in the first fret. Okay, and what I want you to do is I want you to pick one string at a time, the 4th string to the 1st string, the 4th string being the closest to the ceiling, 1st string being closest to the floor. So we're strumming down one string at a time. And David played with the high G, so that's why you hear the higher note first and the lower note. Then I want you to shift it up, move it up 1 fret. Don't worry about what chord name it is for now. Just move it up 1 fret. You're on the 2nd fret, and then you're going to pick the same notes. And you move it up to the 3rd fret, the same thing. 1. Okay, and one of the things, again, that you want to do as part of this practice is not about speed. It's all about tonality and tempo. You want to make sure every note is clear. You want to hear it nice and clean tone quality. Now I'm going to move it back to the 1st fret because if you could play every note nice and clean, then no buzzing, no dampened chords. Because if it's dampened, it typically means your fingers on the fret wire, and the buzzing is sometimes you don't have your finger pressed down hard enough, and that's why the string's buzzing on the fret wire. Dampening is if you're literally on the forward edge of the fret wire, you'll get this dampening sound. So those are the 3 types of sounds that you have that are not good tone quality. And so what you want to make sure that when you're practicing it slow enough, is that you're making sure every note's clean and that it has a even picking pattern or tempo as you're playing it. As I mentioned before in the diminished chord, it's real important that when you play that last note, you give it the full measure of time, you shift and you play the next note, which is on the 4th string, and that time distance, whether you're when you're going from that note on the 1st string on the previous position to the note on the 4th string in the next position, it's in the same time window. If it's not cleanly on tempo, slow down. Definitely slow down. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And you will eventually get faster with time as you practice practice with this rigor. So if the exercises go all the way up to the 7th fret. No buzzing, no dampened notes. And if you do that religiously with that that quality and that intense, I will guarantee you your chord playing will get nice and clean. You're going to be able to play chords with almost no buzzing and no dampening. You'll hear all 4 notes when you strum. I will tell you, this is the hardest chord to play out of all the chords. Your hand will get tired if you're not used to it. As I said before with the diminished chord and the bar chord in the primer class, if you're playing this B flat and your hand gets tired, stop. It's not supposed to be painful. Playing the ukulele is supposed to be fun. You do have to work at it. Herb told me one time the ukulele is the easiest instrument to get started. It is the hardest instrument to master because we only have 4. It's the easiest because we have 4 strings. It's the hardest because we have 4 strings. We can't play all the notes that a guitar plays. We can't play all the notes certainly that a harp has. We play more notes at a time than a trumpet, but a trumpet generally, unless you're a really, really good musician, trumpet plays the notes faster than we can. But we're not about fast, we're about good and fun. So it's one of those things, it should not be painful. One other thing I will point out, and I'm going to flip my camera again, because this is kind of important, is one of the things I found with a lot of people having issues with playing the B flat. I always tell my students that if you notice, my index finger holding the first 2 strings is always pointed at an angle. And the way I tell them how to do that is that this index finger is pointed to my opposite shoulder. So if I'm right-handed, fingering the fretboard with my left hand, this index finger is tipped towards my right shoulder. This is not for everybody, but this is how I got through so that my notes are clean. Once I got this with these 2 notes clean, then the other 2 fingers are reached over, and those fingers need to be arched with a nice curve in them so that the fat of the finger on the bottom side is not touching the string on below it. So you can hear those 3 strings, the 2 inside strings, without, because otherwise it'll be dampened like this. And that's where my ring finger, and I intentionally laid it low, laying it down, not having the arch, and it lays on that 3rd string, and you hear that that sort of dampened sound. You want to have that nice arch to it, so you have that nice tone underneath it. And if you're holding it correct, so this is what you will notice as you move it closer to the 7th fret. If you continually point this finger to your shoulder, it starts to straighten up. This is how I've usually found the easiest work for most people, not all, for most people. There's different people have different hand shapes and they like to hold things differently, but this is how how I get people past this being the hardest chord to play on the ukulele. Is that this finger, if you point it to the shoulder, makes it easier to hold the other shape. Now what does that mean? Classical guitar players hate when I play, even though I started on a classical guitar as a stringed instrument, is because my hand's not straight up and down. And typically on a classical guitar, if you watch me play, I'm actually just like that, straight up and down. On an ukulele, I take a little bit of license. When I'm pointing that finger to get that B flat shape in, because classical guitar, I'm not playing chords. I'm playing lots of successive notes. I'm tipping my wrist is being pulled back so I can get that nice reach over the top. And that's why my finger points, and I'm exaggerating now, that's why my left finger points to my right shoulder. If you're left-handed, you're going to do the reverse. And that's just me. That's a technique. I wanted to point that out. So again, starting from the 1st fret up to the 7th fret, even notes, even rhythm of the tempo, quality notes. If you're playing and your notes sound either dead, buzzing a lot, you're making mistakes, or the tempo's not even, the hardest one is going from it's the shift from playing the note, the 1st string note, and then shift, and then playing the 4th string note. That's the hardest part in this exercise, but that's why you do it as a finger exercise. So now let me, any questions on the B flat shape, which you're using on the 3rd fret for this blues run? No questions? All right, everybody hold the F chord. And then place your 2 free fingers on the 2 open strings to get this F7 shape. Now, this is real important and as an exercise too, but I'll talk about that in the end. So this is the shape that you need to have for the closed chord. The hardest part in this chord shape is now you got fingers across 3 frets. When you move this up 1 fret, you have to move all the fingers up 1 fret. So that the index is now in the 2nd fret, the middle is in this 3rd fret, and the pinky and the ring are now in the 4th fret. And then you pick those. And when you play those, you shift that up 1 more fret, and you play it from the 3rd fret. And continue up the neck, all the way up to the index fingers on the 7th fret. And you want to make sure. Now that one I just played badly. That one I played that with it was sort of dampened, and now it's clean. But you want to make sure all 4 notes are clean. Okay, and then you go back down to the 1st position. And to kind of illustrate just the first couple of bars. As an example of how you want to do that. Now, if you look at the chords on the 12-bar blues, now we'll share the screen. Okay, so now you notice that the F7 chord is in bars 5 and 6. And then in bars 9 and 10, it has the G7, which is 2 frets up. And then the F7 in bar 10 to the fully closed C chord in bar 11. Okay? So anybody have questions on the current chords? Well, the practice exercise that you have, which is the walks, the F7 walk and the B flat walk. So let's try this. I'm going to, does everybody have the chord sheet in front of them? Or do you need me to leave this sheet up on the screen? Everybody's okay with me taking it off the screen? Okay, good. Because I like to see your smiling faces. There we go. All right. So we're gonna play this. We're gonna play this song and play we're gonna play a couple of rounds, and I'm gonna talk about picking patterns with this. So we're gonna start with the C chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. C. All downstrum. 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3. To the F7. 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4 to the C. 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4 to G7. 2, 3, 4 F7. 2, 3, 4 to the C. 2, 3, 4 C. 2 the G7 to the C. 2, 3, 4 1, 2, 3, 4 3, 2, 3, 4 4 2, 3, 4 F7. 2, 3, 4 2, 2, 3, 4 to the C. 2, 3, 4 2, 2, 3, 4 G7. 2, 3, 4 F7. 2, 3, 4 to the C. 2, 3, 4 and stop. Okay, so now I'm going to show you something else, which is really cool. It's a blues slide. It's not really called that. I just made that up. But you're going to slide from the G7 to the F7. And you're going to slide that by, you're going to strum the G7 3 strums. So you're going to go 1, 2, 3, the fourth beat of the G7, you're going to slide it down 1 fret to the 2nd fret. And then on the 1 beat of the F7, you're going to be on the F7 chord. So if I play the last 4 beats, which is the last bar on the 2nd line, which is a C chord, go to the G7 chord. I will show you what it sounds like. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. Then to the C. Sounds really cool, right? So that's, you're going to do a walk to the F7. So that's on this next round. We're going to play that 3 times. We're going to play the 12 bars 3 times. So you get to practice that walk down 3 times. Here we go. Starting with the C. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, shift down, 2, 3, 4 to the C. Okay, so one of the things I'm going to change, I forgot. Instead of playing just 2 beats of the G7 on the last bar, the whole bar now you're going to play as a G7. Okay, so play that G from the G7, and then you can play G7, F7, C, G7 for 4 beats, and then back up to the top. Here we go. G7, 1, 2, 3, down, F7, 2, 3, 4, C, 2, 3, 4, G7, 2, 3, and change. One, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. G7, 2, 3, down, F7, 2, 3, 4, a C, 2, 3, or turn around, 2, 3, 4. One more time through. 2, 2, 3, 4, a 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, F7, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, a C, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, G7, 2, 3, down, F7, 2, 3, 4, a C, 2, 3, 4, and stay on a C, 2, 3, stop. Okay, good. So anybody have any questions on that walk down? So that's typically what you want to do on that walk down. So now I'm going to show you something because I do want to get into at least one different strum, especially with this, is playing the scales. So one of the things, what key are we in right now when we're playing this particular chord shape? These shapes here. Anybody, what key are we in? C chord, the C scale, that's correct. So here's what I want you to do. Everybody's on mute, and so you'll be able to hear it as you hear me coming through your system, because all the different latencies that we might have. One of the things that you might want to try is that as I'm playing this, I want you to play the C scale in any order, any note. And if you're and you want to get fancy like David, and I think John does occasionally, I know Alan occasionally does, John does too occasionally. I know Denise can. I don't know if she does, and I haven't seen Jeff play for a while. I know he's a reformed guitar player, if I remember correctly. So I know he can solo. But one of the things on this is that you can play the C scale. Now, one of the things that you'll find as we go through these chords, there is no wrong note if you play every note in the C scale. What you will hear is that some notes may sound better than other notes. What you want to do is make a mental note. Is okay, these notes sound better when I'm playing the C chord. These notes sound better when I'm playing the F7 chord. These notes sound better when I play the G7 chord. There's a reason for that. There's a whole theory behind that, and we ain't going to talk about that. So one of the things that we will do is that we play. So I'm going to play 3 rounds, and what I want you to do is sort of, this is a piggyback off the primer exercise, to play the scales in any order. If you want to practice your thirds, this is where you're going. You can practice that too, or if you want to go backwards, you can do that too. So it's any note is game in any order, or if you just want to be, I can't remember, I wish I could remember his name. There was one great soloist, and all he did was. He played one note the entire solo, which was great, but it was his rhythm that caught everybody's ear, was the way how he played it, that single note. If you want to do that, feel free. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Well, I'm going to play this a little bit faster. So if you want to play the chords, the intent is for you to practice your scales on top of this. Any notes game. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, how did everybody feel about that? Feel pretty good at how did it sound to you? I see some heads going, it didn't sound good to me. So I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to unmute David. So David, unmute.
I got it.
Yourself. Okay. I want you to play.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you okay. One of these days, I'm going to get me a can with a pencil in it. So when you pull that up, I'm going to say, yeah, I can hear you loud and clear. Okay. Okay. So anyway, so I want you to play the chords. Just play through it one time. Okay.
Okay.
So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. I kind of goofed around. There was a couple of notes I can hear that I didn't make the right choice there, but I will tell you, it didn't sound wrong. Just want to let you know that it didn't sound wrong, but it didn't sound super great. But there was a couple of them that did. So play the F7 chord, David. I mean, just keep strumming. So one of the things I'll talk to you about while I'm strumming on the F7, any note that your finger is on is game. One of those notes that he's on are game notes. So when I heard that when I was playing the G note, that didn't quite sound as sweet, but it didn't sound wrong. When he went just before he shifted off of it, I went to the F note and then went back to the G note because, no, he was on the G7 and I was playing the F note is what I was doing. It didn't sound great, but it sounded okay. And then before he came off of that, I went back to the G note and then back to the F. And when he landed on the F7 chord and I played that F note, that sounded great. So it's one of those things where you just have to get used to, like I said, some of those notes will sound sweet and some of them will sound sweeter. But there is no note that will sound wrong. Okay? And why am I telling you all this? I'd like to get more soloists in the society. The biggest hurdle is getting over the hurdle of fear. Not that you don't know how to do it and you don't know how to play a solo. It's to getting over the fear of playing any solo. The more comfortable you are playing a scale to a song, the more likely that you're going to be able to solo. Is it going to sound like a perfect solo? No. You're starting to learn how to do that. Okay, is it going to be a good enough solo? Absolutely, it's going to be a good enough solo. If all you play is one note, One Note Samba is a great song that it's the whole melody line's it's one note. Now, obviously, he does change it to the octave, but it's the same note, just in a different octave position. Now, if you do that, and I kind of want to leverage what you learned in the primer class, and for those who join us just for the lessons, it's the scale patterns. I believe we have a blues audio file on our website. If you go to the files, download, and then you'll see the list of folders. If you go to the audio catalog, I believe in the audio catalog there's actually this arrangement and in an MP3 file, and you can just play on top of it. The other thing I'll say is that, and I know you've heard me say that, is that when we play Sweet Wahine, that is an A minor, D minor, E7 chord song, and it's in a key of A minor. I will tell you, and there's a whole theory behind it, but we don't care. The C scale notes fit on top of that song in the A minor. They have the same. They share the same notes, all natural notes. So if you were to keep playing the scale, and we were playing a Sweet Wahine, you can actually play a solo piece on top of that. Now, what's an ideal solo? An ideal solo is that you're playing the notes that follow. Doesn't necessarily need to be, but follow the melody line. But that's as you get better. You'll get there. But the first hurdle of learning the solo is getting over the idea of actually playing a solo. Starting with scales is one way to do that, and that's why I harp a lot on scales. Okay? So any questions on the blues? Now, I wanted to do one more thing. We got about 7 minutes, and I wanted to make sure that from the blues, how many of you know how to play? I know everyone knows how to play this down strum. Now, one of the things you notice that I'm doing in this down strum is what? Anybody? I can't hear you, Terry.
Moving your finger up and down.
Well, yes, I'm moving my hand up and down. That's true.
How about that one on your corded hand, on your left hand?
On the fretted hand, yes. And that's called staccato. What I'm doing is I'm actually lifting up, not taking my hands off, but I'm lifting up on the strings. So what happens is it dampens it stops the ringing. And this is called the staccato, and it sounds cool, and it sounds more percussive. So now we have sound of an instrument making the 4 notes. Because remember, strumming, I can only strum one string at a time. And then I'm stopping it to give it a more percussive feel to it. So then I have... It's a learned technique. You may not get the right the first time. You may hear strings buzzing, but this is how you practice that. There's a moment in time that you want to lift your fingers up, and you have to do the staccato piece early enough in that it doesn't sound only percussive. You don't want this. That's when we start getting into chunking. But you do want to hear all 4 notes, and then you dampen it inside of that beat. And you because you could go, or I'm strumming up on the dampened notes to give it like a snare drum. So I'm going. You can give that percussive sound there, and that's also a learned technique. I want to go over some of these strumming techniques that you can add to these blues, and as you add these different strumming techniques, you can change the flavor. You heard me do this in the first run. I was just going the first time through, just playing this 3, 4, 1, 2. But then on the second time through the run, you heard me go. And that gives it a little bit more flavor. So I'm going down, I'm gonna down, down, up, up, down, up, down, down, up. The calypso strum. Right? This is the calypso strum. And you could do that, and the notes continue to ring through. But what I'm doing is I'm adding the staccato piece in. So then you have this little bit more a lilt with very rhythmic beat, but I'm still strumming the same strum. It's still the calypso strum, and when I'm strumming certain parts, I'm actually leaving it in the dampening mode on the up strum. Actually, it's strum, staccato. I'm still on a staccato on the down, and then I'm pressing down up. Then it's a up, down, up. So it's up on a sound, staccato on the down, or actually dampened on the down, and then so now you got this where you hear the beat is on the 1 beat, the end of the 2 beat, and then the down of the 4 beat is where you hear the chord. On the 2 beat and the 4 beat is dampened. Did I say that right? And of the 2 and is and it goes. I have to slow that down. You can hear it on the video, and you could get creative. But I just took a basic calypso strum, and when I put pressure or not, I could create these other rhythmic patterns. Now, where do I get those rhythm patterns from? Now, I'm just going to point that out. There is a file on our shared drive, and this is in the lessons and templates. Let me find my right folder. Here we go. It's called NVUS Strum Techniques version 2.1, and I'm going to share that. That was one of the other links I had you look at. So this is the file that is the shared strums. Did we get anybody added? Oh, yes. So Terry, you weren't in when before we did the first break where we took the picture of everybody, right? Were you in on the picture? You were? Okay, because I think that would be everybody then. Okay, so on this strum patterns, this is all strum patterns that we do on all of the songs. So if you hear me talk about straight 4s, that's this sequence number 1, this first row. That's all just downs, and the ups are grayed out because you don't play those. Your hand still moves in that direction, but you're not playing them. Then you can have straight 4s plus ands on a 4. That means you strum down on 1, 2, 3, 4, but then you're going to go play the up. And if you heard me do the blues where I was going 1, 2, 3, you heard that and I'm strumming up on the and. That's on the turnaround. So that way when I go, before I shift, it's very much of an emphasis on up shift. Is on the and I'm strumming up, and I'm shifting on the down strum on the downbeat of the next chord. That's how I would use this S4 and 4. Then you have the straight 8s. You heard me talk about those. That's just straight up and down. The straight 8s can be twisted by playing a swing. And that's just playing the and beat slid back. So it sounds like N1, N2, N3, N4, N1, N2, N3. That's a swing. It's played more swing. Then chunk 2 4s, straight 8 chunk 2 4. That's this is the way we play. We'll almost play. No, we don't play it that way. I was going to say Sweet Wahine, but this is close to that. But there are some stronger going. the ensemble uses that for Wayfaring Stranger. Their arrangement of Wayfaring Stranger is this particular strum. And then what I want you to point to is actually on the Calypso Chunk 2/4, which is strum number 10. That's the one we just talked about. And this is with Calypso Chunk 2/4 and the Calypso, or AKA doo-wop. Here's the doo-wop: down, down, up, up, down, up. This is very typical songs we were playing. And that's a lot of the clubs. That is the money chord for a lot of ukulele groups. And then we use the 10 where we're playing Sweet Wahine. We use the combination of the 9 for the beginners and 10 for the more intermediate advanced, adding in that more percussive sound. So every chord that I went through, every chord that we have a song for is in here with a name. So take a look at this chord sheet. And I mean, there's some that we've never played, like there's number 20s, the thump strum. We've talked about that. And when we play Fox on a Run and Shady Grove. The bum chicka is the thump strum with an uptick on, you're playing on the, it's where you're going in 1 E and 2 E and the part of swing. You're actually, when you're doing the thump strum, you're going. There's that little uptick in that strum. It's not added. You're still doing down 1 and 2 and 2. And a thumb strum is all down. 1 and 2 and 3 and then you have that uptick in there. So take a look at all these. There's some notes at the bottom where it talks about, if you ever heard with like Uptown Funk. It's a combination of strum 18 and 19. It's these two, Uptown Funk 1 and Uptown Funk 2. Those are the two strums that Bruno Mars uses in Uptown Funk. We're at the top of the hour, and we covered a lot of material. And I wanted to ask, I wanted to give you an opportunity to really ask any questions. So I want to, everybody unmute yourselves, and then you can ask questions. Then we're going to try something with everybody unmuted.
Oh no.
Oh, there's no such thing as oh no. It's a great experiment. And one of the things I will do is I will also send out a note or post a note on our website on optimal Zoom settings, because I wanted to hear something. It's going, for me, it's going to prove a point for me. I'm doing this for a reason. But anybody have any questions on the material we covered today in the primer and today's lesson?
So you talk about the chord of the scale to do the solos,
Mm-hmm.
and then you mentioned if you hold the chord, you can play the notes for a solo.
Yes. So if I'm holding this F7 chord, you can use any of those notes. Because those are all notes. They're all in this. Oh, I'm sorry. All except for the E flat. E flat is not in the C scale. All right. But it is in the F7 chord. So it only during that moment in time you're playing the F7 chord, it's a legal note. Okay. But that E flat only works in the E7 when you're playing, F7 chord.
F7, right.
It doesn't work on
like
a
the
G.
sound of that.
I'm
It
sorry.
sounded good. I like the sound of holding the chords and playing the notes. And it was a little easier than doing the scale.
Well, yeah, but one of the things you have to remember is that not all the scale notes are being played, because you only play 4 notes at a time, and there's at least 7 unique notes, 8 if you include the octave
Yeah.
of in the scale. So you're only playing 50% of the notes, and a melody note may not exist at that moment in time in the chord. It may be around the chord, but it's not in the chord.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a really good question, and there's no right answer, Catherine. I mean, you can, that's what I'm saying. The better but to get started, if you play scale notes with the chords, all of them are right, none of them are wrong. Some are better than others.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a really good question. Anybody else? I only see half of everybody unmute themselves. So we're going to try this. Because if this works, this is a technical experiment for me before we say goodbyes for today. Because the technical experiment is for me to hear. Basically I'm going to be listening to everybody's little window, but it's to kind of gauge couple of things: how fast your network is, and how because a lot of people are challenged, a lot of clubs are challenged on how to jam together with a bunch of people. There's another piece of software I hadn't had time to go look at it yet. I will after I submit my taxes on Wednesday. I'll have a lot more time available after that. But one of the things that when we're playing, I'm going to be playing. David and I are going to be strumming the chords. I want everybody else to pick scale notes, any scale note. And if you're going to play the, let me see, there's G7 has all scale notes. The F7 has the one E flat. But so that would be the one note outside of the scale notes that you could play, but only on the F7. Okay, so here we're going to go. And everybody's unmuted, so everybody play. If we do this right, there should be unless somebody misses a note. And I don't care if you just don't make a face. Don't let anybody else. If you want to sit there and you hit a bad note, just look to your left or your right. Say, oh, there was one of those. Or look down. In my case, I would go, David. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. And stop. Okay, yeah, there was some really good soloing I heard going on. There are some echoes that I heard, and I get some fixes for that. So kind of one of the things on the because how many of you know the technical background behind Zoom? It's engineered for voice teleconferences around a virtual table. That's what it's designed for. And what are we doing? We're playing music. We have instruments that's going to go up and down in loudness. We got in different ranges of pitches, means notes. How high they are, how low they are. So we got all these dynamics that are going on. Zoom tries to auto-correct us, saying, I'm smarter than you, and I'm going to fix the sound as if you're sitting around a table having a conversation. Okay, that's not what we're doing. So there's certain things that for this kind of be able to work better. It will not be 100%, but it works better. There's some settings I need you to do. I'm going to post those on, and I can hear, because I can hear some tonal sounds. I can hear echoes, which are latencies. We can't fix all of them. I'm going to give you some recommendations on settings that will help with a lot of that. And if you follow those, and if you are not comfortable with all the settings, the more you set, the better it will become. You can trust me on that. So the next time we get together, if we get closer to the dynamic, it'll get cleaned up. the hardest part to deal with on Zoom or any other medium like this is the latency. I will tell you, being on a regular computer, whether it's a Mac or a PC, or even a Linux system if you got it set up, on a hardwired LAN to as fast a service that you can get from your provider is the best way to reduce latency. That's the best way. It's not going to remove all of it because I can't control all the latency. Now, here's the idea. It's not me communicating with each of you. It's me communicating to the Zoom server, wherever that might be. Since we're all in Virginia, I would hope that they would connect all of us to some server that's here on the East Coast. It could be in New York, it could be in Miami, it could be in Atlanta. I don't know where we're connecting, but at least it's on the East Coast. It means the network path is shorter. Then it's from there to you. And then it's from actually to your service provider, then your service provider to you. If you're on a phone, on a wireless, I will tell you, you will have the greatest amount of contribution of latency to the whole. If you're on and I would say David and I are on big PCs, I mean really big PCs with really, really fast networks. And we're paying a premium price for the service we're getting from our providers. Some of the stuff I do for work and some of the stuff I do musically, I have a super fast speed. My wired LAN speed is as fast as my service provider gives me my service. I have a 1 gigabit whole back end all the way into the service provider. That's fast. But have I reduced all the latency? No, because I don't control from my service provider to the Zoom server. And I'll never get the control of that. So, but again, so that means I'm going to have some latency. The more we squeeze out of how slow, does everybody know what latency is?
Yeah.
So, it's how long it takes to send a message. I speak to you and maybe 20 seconds later you hear it. That's latency. That's an exaggerated latency, but it's in this world, it's in microseconds, and the microseconds count. And when you're not playing together in the same room, it makes a big difference and you can hear it. Well, the more we squeeze out of it, the better experience we'll have, and it won't sound. I will tell you, because you're playing C, because and I heard it. There's other things like echoes and tunnels I want to try to get rid of. But if you're playing a C scale on a blues, nobody's playing the wrong note unless you happen to hit the wrong note by accident. It doesn't sound like a cacophony. It actually sounds not musical, but it's close to being musical because everybody's playing the same notes within the frame. And you can hear, and I'm gonna bet for who's here. It was either because David was playing, he was strumming the rhythm with me, so it was either going to be Alan or Jeff or maybe even John was playing some really great solos. I know Denise is working on doing some solos because I've seen her try. But this is one of those things that over time you'll get to improve your we call it musicianship. Hopefully everybody enjoyed what we covered today. It's a lot thinner material, but we covered it in more depth. So we talked about the chorded walks. Now, if you go to so that just kind of review. The finger exercises we covered today is actually number 2, which is the diminished chord walk. The primer folks covered the bar chord walk because we add that as part of walking the scales. That's number 3. We talked about number 4, the B flat chord walk, and number 5, the F7 chord walk. So we covered 4 of the 5 finger exercises that are on our standard sheet. And that sheet's on the website. And you can see if you want to go read more about it, the recording for the session today, and I'm going to start, I actually have last couple of sessions as well. I just got to figure out our storage capability under GoDaddy. I don't want to blow it up that we don't get anything, but I know there's some limitations, but I want to put so that you could and in the link in the discussions, if I'm able to do this, I'm going to try to put today's and see what happens. You're able to go to that link and then start an MP4 playback and run it back that way. If it doesn't work with GoDaddy, we have our own channels with YouTube through Google. And then what we could do there is actually, I'll provide you our society link to an unlisted. So you can't search for it on the internet, but if you have the link, you can directly get access to it and you can play back. And that will be in the event page. It'll be one of the discussion links I have in there. Now, I think this is the most we've had at any one time in a while. That makes me more happy. We're not quite at the level of number of people that we've had at our jam sessions. Jams are in 2 weeks, and to kind of put the plug in, then I'll leave it open for last questions. So in 2 weeks we have our primer, same drill. I'm going to go through the same drill. Then we have our jams. I will tell you, Manuel Vera, if you know him, he comes from the Maryland side, and he's playing 3 songs. And of course there's David and I who are playing our normal gig. That is live streamed on YouTube. The primer is on Zoom, just like we see here. The jams is on YouTube. Then we have the open mic, which is on live streamed on Facebook. Now, who doesn't have Facebook? I'm just kind of curious. Oh, good. Everybody has Facebook. All right, so it's live streamed on Facebook. And last month, who was lucky enough to be on to watch last month's open mic? Okay. Some of you got a treat because Michael Kiale, my cousin, got to play at the end. He anchored our open mic, which was great. So from Kauai, he plugged in and played. Of course, he played more than the 3 traditional songs, but I'm not going to tell a professional musician that's all you get is 3 songs. Now, I will tell you, you'll get to hear. How many of you know of a group called Grief Cat? How many of you know the name Louisa Hall? Louisa Hall used to be a member in our club, and she went out and she asked me one time about the 9, and I said, "Oh, they invited you to play. Go play with them," because the 9 included folks like Marcy Marxer, Kathy Fink, and a couple other musicians. Victoria Vox also played with the 9, and it has every gig. They have 9 artists playing original songs. They play one original song through a set. They go back through, they play a second original song, then they play one capstone song together. They invited Louisa to play. She's been playing with the 9 forever, but now she plays on her own. She does solo acts all up and down the East Coast, and she's played as far as, I think, Texas. And now she's part of a group, a female duo called the Grief Cat, and I can never remember her partner's name, or her part of her duo. They are playing at this open mic as the anchor set. So it's a former member of the club, but she's going to be playing as part of Grief Cat. So her duet partner is going to be playing the anchor set. That's what I've got arranged right now, and I think all the rest of their other ones, not to take anything away from them, they're going to be playing too. So there's like Cinda Smith, who's a member. How many know Rowan Clark, our teenager? So she's going to be performing. Our young performer Kai Posey, the shredder, he's going to be playing, and then we got a couple other folks as well. And so it's starting to catch on that doing the open mic through virtual is as good, maybe not as rewarding because you don't get to see everybody's reaction right away. And we're getting good at it. We now have a virtual green room that we put all the artists in. They get to chat amongst themselves, tell lies about me, and then when it's time for them to perform, they come out of the green room and they go and play. So we run it just like a regular stage. So that's for this coming in 2 weeks. And now I'll open it up for any last minute questions.
This isn't a question, but I don't know if everyone knows that Moses recorded that open mic. I went and listened to the recording. It was awesome. I was really happy that it was there to listen to.
Yeah, and that's publicly available. We don't publicly release it until the actual the main performer. So until Mike got to review it and said it was okay for us to release it, that's when we made it publicly available. And Louisa Hall and our partner for Grief Cat, they'll be the same thing with them. They'll be the drivers behind whether or not we release it publicly. But that's, yes, I almost forgot about it. Thanks, Denise. I forgot that it's actually available on live online. The other thing I'll also mention, because it happens next week, Sunday. How many of you know about the ensemble going to Hawaii twice in the last 4 years? Okay. We got invited 3 weeks ago. Some of you heard me say this already, and some of you haven't heard this. But 3 weeks ago, and correct me if I'm wrong, David, it was 3 weeks ago, right? Or maybe 3 weeks.
I have to look. Yeah, roughly. Yeah.
That's roughly 3 weeks ago. We got invited to put a recording together to be included in their 1 hour special next week, Sunday. Now, unfortunately for us, that's 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock Hawaii time. That's midnight. Oh, wait a minute. Is it 7 o'clock? If it's 7 to 8, it will be 1 to 2 o'clock in the morning our time. I plan on staying up for that, because one of the things that we got our recording that we put together is we put the whole recording together. They're going to take a snapshot and it gets included in a worldwide ensemble performance. So I don't know what that looks like, because I'm not the producer, but it'll be nice to see how that comes out. But it will be part. Now, one of the interesting things are, because I didn't know how they wanted it, I said, here's a sample recording of what we do. Is this what you're looking for? And it was the ensemble's been practicing for the last 15 weeks, every week. We still have our rehearsals, but we've done it a new way. We go over techniques. Each person records their own recording to a metronome or to a scratch track. And then David and I put it together to and we try not to use too much technology. We try to use more integrating it as recorded to kind of point out, okay, you slowed down here, you sped up here, you didn't take the right breath here. The kind of because we can't do that in person, so we get to do that virtually. We've come to a new norm of rehearsing. We showed them Shady Grove. They liked it. They wanted us to remove all of our taglines, which is saying we're at Northern Virginia Ukulele Society down at the bottom. But they wanted the whole recording. And I get it, because they need, the producers and the television station need to put their own taglines down on the bottom and not ours. So we submitted that as well. So I am really interested in watching that show on next week Sunday at 7 to 8 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time. It will replay again on the 21st, which I think is Wednesday. But the problem with us, it's around the same time. But I'm sure once they send it live stream, KITV or KHNL, I forget which their call sign is, but it's K5 Hawaii, will record it so that you can play it playback as well. This is to cover 50 years. If you didn't know, the Ukulele Festival Hawaii on Oahu is 50 years old this year. They are the oldest and longest running ukulele festival in the United States. And as far as I know, they are the largest because they have the largest amount of people attending it. They have upwards of 4,000 people attending it over 2 days. And I think on one occasion, they had 4,000 on one day that go through the whole festival. They show up. Some people don't show up the whole day. But we've played to the ensemble. I think it was roughly, when we played, David, would you say it was close to 1,000, 800 to 1,000 people in the audience?
Oh yeah, probably.
So that's what we got to do, and I'm hoping that supporting their objectives and answering the call when they asked us to put a recording together, and we did, that we'll get to get invited back next year if the COVID settles down. So I wanted to cover those admin things, and last chance for questions. Anybody? Then I want to thank everybody for showing up, and hopefully you got what you're looking for in the lessons. Feel free to send me an email note or post a note on the discussion of the event. If there's anything you like, you didn't like this, you like that, or you make recommendations, feel free to drop us. We don't take pride in anything, and we do take pride in everything. We want to make sure that we're providing stuff that works for you. Okay? All right, then I will see you, all of you, in about 2 weeks at the primer, the jams, and hopefully you'll stay for the open mic.
Thanks, Moses.
See you later.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks
Bye.
for coming, everybody.
Thank you.
Later.
You.